This is the Kodak Pocket Junior 1, a medium format film camera produced by Kodak in the 1920s. This one in particular has not been used since 1926, so let's see if it still can take pictures.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video where I test old and quirky cameras so that you don't have to. Last week I was shooting on some Soviet KGB spy cameras from the 60s. This week I'm shooting on a Kodak from the 1920s. But the reason I chose this camera for this video is because recently I've been really interested in photography from the beginning of the 20th century, at least the 1920s and sort of 1930s. Photographers like Brassai, even early work by Stanley Kubrick a bit later on, and then even more later on, people like Joseph Kudelka. And I really like that high contrast, black and white, quite grainy look that these photographers got. Now, this look isn't a direct product of using an old camera, obviously. It's more the film stocks and techniques that these early photographers used. But I thought maybe if I used an old camera, I would feel inspired to take similar images. So here is the camera I got, the Kodak Pocket Junior #1. I bought my one on eBay for £19, which is ridiculously cheap, almost quite sad to be honest. It's such a beautiful piece of technology, a real relic from the past, and to find these so cheap and so readily available, I don't know, I do find it a bit sad. Having said that, they did make these in like thousands and thousands, so there's tons on the market, which is probably why they're so cheap. This camera was sort of a user-friendly camera. Anyone could use it. They even marketed it for school children. So this isn't really the most sophisticated camera from that time. Maybe not one that high-end photographers would use. But this was your standard camera in the 1920s. SLRs and more modern-looking cameras didn't really become popular until the 1930s, with cameras like the Leica 3, for example. The camera itself is really simple. It's like any other camera. It takes 120 film, as I've said. It's got relatively slow shutter speeds. The fastest it can go is 1/100th of a second. After that, it's 1/25th of a second, and then a bulb mode, and then this T, which was a bit problematic, but we'll get into that later on. When it comes to aperture, the lowest you will get from this camera is f7.7, which it's kind of crazy. It does go up to like f40, which I suppose sort of compensates for the slow shutter speeds. But yeah, shallow depth of field and low light photography is definitely not this camera's forte. And that's pretty much it. It hasn't got a film advance lever. Obviously, you just twist this little dial at the top. There's really not that much to it. It's a range focusing system, so you don't look through the lens to focus. You sort of guess the distance. Now, this camera uses feet because it was made in Great Britain, the one that I'm using. Now, I was born in France, so I'm really used to the metric system, so focusing on this camera for me was a bit difficult. Made even more difficult by the fact that to compose your image, you look through a tiny bit of glass. It's a waist level viewfinder, but it's basically a little tiny crystal looking bit of glass that you look through and compose your image with that. And yeah, loading this camera is really simple. It's definitely the easiest camera to load ever. I should also mention, quite funnily, this is my first ever medium format camera that I've ever shot. First time shooting 120 film. So probably not the best quality I'm gonna get for medium format, maybe not the best introduction to the medium, but it's still quite cool. I decided to take my first roll into Edinburgh and shoot some nightscapes, shoot some cityscapes as well. I went into the old town of Edinburgh. I wanted to try and replicate the early photography of Brassai across Paris in the 1930s. He took these very atmospheric sort of film noir shots around Paris. There's some high contrast, a lot of shadows, sometimes some fog and mist. That's the look I was trying to replicate. Edinburgh's full of these little side streets that are basically Victorian. They haven't really changed that much, so they look perfect for this kind of photography. The lighting's really dim in these places, so I obviously had to use a long exposure, and this is when my first issue sort of arrived. To take long exposures on this camera, there's a bulb mode, as I've previously said. And like a lot of old cameras, this camera has a T mode, which stands for timer, I'm guessing, or time. I'm not 100% sure, to be honest. What this basically means is that you hit the shutter once and it opens it, and then you hit it again and it closes it. Unlike a bulb mode where you hit the shutter once, you hold down on your shutter release cable, and then when you let go, it closes the shutter. This is different than that. And this is why I got images like this. Don't get me wrong, it's really cool, but as you can see, there's these trails of light. That is just because the shutter remained open for the whole time that I was using this camera for this picture. So I hit the shutter, took the picture, waited, and then took the camera off the tripod, put it back in its bag. And that is where you got these trails. The highlights were still being exposed when I was moving this camera, so anything that was bright in the image ends up getting moved, as if I was moving the camera or as if the subject was moving. I mean, it is really cool, don't get me wrong. If you look at the second image, it's a bit too dark, but you can kind of really see the effects of this. One thing that I did learn from using this camera, especially at night, is that you tend to have to overexpose the film more than you would already. And I was pressing the shutter down 2 seconds longer than my light meter told me, but a lot of the shots, regardless of the light trails, were still underexposed. That's always a good idea to overexpose your images, especially at night anyway, so maybe I just didn't hold it down long enough. I'm not really too sure. But yeah, this is definitely my favorite image here, the old cathedral in Edinburgh. I love how the highlights in this case, the top of the cathedral, which is lit up at night, was duplicated basically twice on the negative. It's really cool to me. A quick note on the negative, they're absolutely huge on this camera. It takes 6:9 images, which is as big as you're gonna get on medium format. So your negatives are really big, which in theory should mean more detail. However, I will say, I don't know if it's the way that they were scanned. These images aren't that sharp. Now, don't get me wrong, this was a user-friendly, relatively cheap, even for the time, camera that's 100 years old. So I'm not expecting sort of Mamiya 7 quality from it, but it's basically like using a cheap 35mm film camera. But yeah, anyway, that was the first set of images that I got from this camera, and I was relieved that it worked, to be honest with you. Second day, I decided to load up another roll of Fomapan, this time push it to 800 and go out and shoot an old car that I've already shot on this channel, I believe. It's an old Cadillac that is somewhere across the city from me, but it's just a really nice old piece of Americana that we don't really get a lot in the UK. It's quite rare to see an American car from that era. I went out to go and shoot that. So I'm right here in Edinburgh right now. As you can see behind me, there's an old Chevrolet car. Now I know it's a bit more modern than the camera I'm using. I'm guessing maybe from the 60s or the 70s. I've actually shot this car before on this channel a few months ago. You can go and check my video on that. I believe it was on Kodak Ultramax. It was on 35mm film. Anyway, but I'm back here just because I love it so much. It's such a cool, unique car. We don't really get much of these in the UK, so I thought it'd be great to shoot on this camera, even though it's not really from the 20s. I do know that. It's still vintage enough, and it's still good enough, I think, for this video. Now, I did come out here to time it was golden hour. However, there happens to be a huge inactive volcano here in Edinburgh, which is blocking most of the sun, so most of this car, in fact, all of this car is in the shadow, but it doesn't matter. I still think we'll be able to take some cool pictures. I'm very excited. I am pushing this film this time to 800 ISO, not as much as I did before, but hopefully it should still be fine. I'm hoping to get f7 at 125th of a second. Hopefully that should do it. We'll see what we get. First image here is out of focus. As I was mentioning, it's in feet, the distance, and obviously I badly guessed what that would be. I used a metric system, as I mentioned. It's always a bit of guesswork when I'm sort of determining distances like this in feet. And the composition really isn't great. The shadows don't look amazing. The highlights look very flat. However, the second image, I actually really like. The composition's much, much stronger. The shadows look a lot richer. But yeah, I really, really like this image. I like the really rich and dark shadows. That's the look I really wanted to get with this camera, especially under the car with that little doorway in the wall in the back. And I like the leading lines. Shame about the lamppost, but other than that, I think it's a really nice picture. Sadly, the camera did end up opening on its own, which resulted in light leaks, which ruined the rest of the roll. So they're the only two pictures I got off that roll. Because it shoots 6:9 size negatives, you end up getting 8 images per roll. So yeah, 2 is not great, but it is what it is. For the rest of the shoot, I decided to go out into the countryside and shoot a few different lighting environments. I'm also going to apologise for the state of my hair. It's really early and I've not had a shower or anything yet, so sorry. All right, you are going to be my subjects. Right, I've always been terrified of horses. Maybe f16. I'll overexpose it a tiny bit and just see what that does. I'm actually going to hold the camera vertically this time. I've not done that yet. I've always been taking landscape photos. See what it does, really, I guess. You know? For once, the viewfinder is actually super clear. I will say that. Oh, focus. Yeah, I was about to forget to focus. How many feet is, I don't know feet. I work in the metric system. I'm gonna guess between 5 to 6 feet. Maybe, I mean at this aperture it must be fine anyway, no? This image here of the horse, it was really strong lighting. I was using Fomapan 400 once again, this time pushed to 800, like the last roll. It's not bad, it's fine. It's a very basic image, nothing wrong with it. The composition's really fine, the horse is just right in front of you. I ended up moving positions from where I was in the previous video just so I could get a better angle of the horse. It's really hard to frame something like that on this lens. As I mentioned with the viewfinder, it's not really the easiest camera to line up a shot with. But after that image, I took this one here, which I like quite a lot. I like the highlights in the back and I like the rich, deep contrast that you get in this image. The shadows are really dark. I like the framing of the horse. It looks a bit scary and eerie, if I'm being completely honest, but that's the sort of look I wanted. This one, I took a golden hour that same day, and as you could tell, it's a basic shot with the shadows. I just really like it. It sort of reminds me of like the old westerns that I used to watch as a kid from like the 1950s. I don't know, the whole barn and farm look. I just really like the vibe with this image. Golden hour never fails with the lighting, so I think the shadows look really nice in this. It's probably the sharpest image I got from the whole shoot that I did with this camera. Finally, my final image from this day was of this horse here taken through a door. I really like this image. I don't know why, it's probably my favorite from the whole shoot. I just like how ridiculous the whole concept is of it, but I like the framing. I like having a frame within a frame. So shooting through a doorway like this and having something like a horse looking at the camera, it's pretty cool. I also really love how the highlights were rendered in this image. I think the sky looks beautiful and I'm really happy with this image. The exposure's fine and I think it looks old. These images all look really old, which is obviously the point of using a camera like this. I don't know if it's the softness in the lens, it's obviously the black and white film helps with that, but they really have that timeless quality to these pictures. A photo like this could have been taken at any time really, I think, that you can't really date it. But yeah, overall, I'm excited that this camera works. I wasn't expecting it to work at all. It was a bit of a nightmare to use, even though it's so simple. It's almost too simple. All the little switches work fine, but some of them were a bit loose. It took some getting used to. It's mad that a camera that's that old still works today. Will the camera that I'm filming with now work in 100 years? Probably not. Now I know cameras nowadays are a lot more technical and modern, obviously, than they were. Back then, it was basically then a shutter system, a bit of glass, and that was it. But I don't know, it's just mental to me that something that was built in a factory 100 years ago still works beautifully today. And you can get some really beautiful timeless photos. It's definitely a camera that you're gonna get used to. I think my framing got a lot better as I went on, same as my exposure. I think the more you use it, the more you get used to the different quirks and settings. I hope you enjoyed this video about this camera. It was definitely a fun experience, and if you own one and you've not used it yet, definitely go out and use it. And if you're interested in using it, they're really cheap online, so definitely go out and see if you can find one. Let me know if you've ever used a camera like this or a similar camera that's similar age. I'm always interested in old gear like this, but if you did enjoy this video, make sure you leave a like, subscribe and comment, and I will see you next week for a new video.